Hello, Steve. How you doing?
Nick, how are you?
We're in a funny place.
This is the weirdest place you've ever been.
Oh my god! So we're in the Steve and I are in the BFI at the moment, in the foyer, by a bin, sitting on the floor behind a Christmas tree.
It's clandestine podcasting, isn't it, Nick?
Totally, because I couldn't find it. So Steve and I have come to London because we've come to see a couple of our heroes, Adam and Joe, do a
probably
show.
some inspiration for why we started our own podcast.
I think that's true. Yeah.
Do you feel like we're coming home
true.
on some level?
Yeah, I can't wait for the show later. But it feels weird. I feel a little bit like I'm doing some very naughty things.
Yeah, well, we're stealing power. We basically come to the Southbank and stolen some electricity.
Sharing our plug block are the Adam and Joe merch people.
Yeah.
They're just setting up their Adam and Joe t-shirts and other bits and pieces that I might have a little browse of later.
Nick's got a bit giddy with excitement. He's all here.
So yeah.
Another podcast.
Yeah. So
I reckon we're going to get interrupted at any point. So if for any reason, listeners, you never hear of us again, this will be the last recording.
It might well be. But it's great. I mean, I'm comfortable on the floor, Steve. I don't know about you.
Very much so, Nick. Very much so.
Okay. So, welcome to another podcast. And we're going to be talking about a great variety of interesting nuggets from the world of science today, aren't we, Steve?
Indeed. As always, Nick. As always.
So, I guess, oh my goodness, who's that coming over here?
Someone coming to tell
Who's
us
that? It's like he's got something hanging from his belt. Looks a bit aggressive. Let's get out of here, Steve.
Run.
Let's get on with the podcast.
Run.
Let's go. Science Shed! We're in the Science Shed! Science Shed! We're in the Science Shed! Come on, Steve. Bunsen. Burner. Dolly. Machine. Internal. Combustion. Why do we need? Steam. Petri. Dishes. Austin. Base. Isaac. Newton. Transplanting. Oh, so, Steve.
I'm relaxing a little bit now.
I'm relaxing.
I reckon we're still going to get told off.
Yeah, but I don't mind actually. I'd be happy if we got told off. Maybe Adam and Joe might tell us off.
We should tweet Adam Buxton that we did this. We should take a picture right now and say we're podcasting live from
next to the merch people.
Yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take a picture on my phone as we speak.
Well,
you're part of history now, listeners.
Steve's actually holding his camera up. He's holding his camera up. You need to get the bin in, mate. Yeah, there you go. The bin's in. Great. Here we go.
Okay.
So you'll enjoy... Well, you may enjoy looking at that. You probably won't, actually, because it's a boring picture of me and Steve sitting on a random floor next to a bin. Oh, Steve. So, what you been up to, mate?
Since I saw you last?
Yeah.
2 days ago.
2 days ago.
Yeah. I've been doing interviews all day today.
You've been doing what?
Interviews. I've been interviewing people all day.
Again?
Yeah, graduate.
You were doing that like 2 weeks ago?
That was undergraduate interviews. This
so
is
who have you been
postgraduate.
interviewing this time?
It was all of the people that were applying to do a PhD in physical chemistry.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So
maybe I shouldn't really talk about this on the podcast. Maybe that's pretty unprofessional. I'm quite an unprofessional person sometimes.
Well,
I learned everything from you. I used to be such a good boy.
You can talk.
Very professional, and then you just came along and just.
I think, Steve, the podcast was your idea, if I remember correctly. We were in a pub in Waterloo somewhere, not far from where we're sitting at the moment, in the foyer of the BFI.
Yeah, and 6 months later, here we are, sat by a bin.
Who would have thought we would have ascended to such greatness in such a short period of time? It's amazing.
Yeah. All right, so should we get on with some science? Nick, I've got something for you.
What you got for me, Steve? Hit me.
Hit me with your...
Not with the rhythm stick.
Oh.
Just hit me metaphorically.
With a metaphorical
I don't want any
stick.
of your stick touching me.
So, so I've had a few new people start in my lab. We've had a few project students start.
Oh, yeah.
And I was chatting to one of them. And
do you tie them to the bench and whip them when they don't?
I don't really see them much, actually. Generally, my students and postdocs look after them.
Oh, you
so
delegate,
I just come in and,
You're like the sort of plantation owner.
Exactly. Standing there with my white linen suit.
In your mansion.
Supping brandy. And clicking my fingers.
And they're bent over getting whipped in a field.
Yeah, I think that's people's. That's if you could ask, we could interview someone from my lab, see if they
It'd be
they
nice
agree.
to see whether they fulfil that.
Yeah. But I was talking about. It made me remember when I did my project when I was an undergrad. Right?
Oh, did you do one?
I did one over the summer.
I didn't even do one.
I did my first time I'd ever worked in a lab. I got like a scholarship to work in the lab over the summer for like 15 weeks or something.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Are you still basking in the warm glow from receiving that scholarship?
Pretty much.
Do you still pop it on your CV?
Still on there. Yeah. Awards. But what I did is it was in a synthetic lab. You quite like this, right?
Synthetic lab?
Yeah, so in
What, it
inorganic,
wasn't a natural lab in like a kind of
that means you
wooded
make,
glade?
Synthetic chemists make stuff, right? And I don't make stuff anymore. I do a little bit, but not really. And I was making these inorganic compounds.
Inorganic.
Inorganic
so
chemistry.
Inorganic stuff is stuff that doesn't contain carbon. Is that correct?
That's one definition, although inevitably inorganic chemistry normally contains carbon. What it really means is metals. So you have a metal center, and then you have like various ligands that coordinate around it.
Are they heavy metals?
They can be.
I love heavy metals.
I know you love heavy metals. Does Rush count as heavy metal?
No, definitely not.
Metal?
They're progressive rock or hard rock?
Hard rock. Yeah, I would say hard rock.
They're hard rock with progressive.
Right.
But they're never
well, if
been
anyone's
heavy.
not listened to the Science Show before, Nick is a huge Rush fan. So we always like to bring it into the podcast as much as we can.
No,
anyway, back to my story.
Okay,
Stop talking about you.
Can we not talk about heavy metal? I prefer. No, I'm joking. Carry on.
Okay, so I was making these compounds, and anyway, during that summer, they were moving labs. So the inorganic chemistry labs, who I don't know, they have these big glove boxes. So if anyone's seen like The Simpsons at the beginning, where Homer's like putting one bit of like radioactive material into another, all of inorganic chemistry is generally done in a big box that looks like that.
Oh, you mean like, so you've got a cabinet, and you stick your hands in
it's
massive
a big cabinet
leather
with
gloves these
big gloves that dangle out.
Yeah. You
so
call that a glove box?
Yeah, you call that a glove box.
That's what I've got in my car.
That
next to the passenger
that's
seat.
a very different kind of glove box, yeah.
Oh, they need to call it a different name so I don't get confused. I just had suddenly imagined a lab with these sort of clip-down boxes sort of stowed away somewhere.
Yeah, no, it wasn't like that at all.
Right,
So it's more like, so you've got this kind of big like box, about the size of kind of
a big cupboard, like
a big
cupboard, wardrobe.
Yeah,
or something.
bigger than that, about the size of a wardrobe.
And
it's got an airlock on the side, right?
Yeah,
so you put stuff in. The idea is that because you're working with compounds that degrade in air, you have to work in a nitrogen or an argon atmosphere. So the whole thing is filled up with nitrogen, so no oxygen can get in. They can't degrade your compounds, and you can do interesting chemistry.
Must be hard to move those things.
They're pretty heavy. Yeah, you don't move them. In fact, once you've moved them, they can't stay airtight.
But you just said that you were moving.
So the lab was moving.
And they left them there,
well,
just like sort of isolated in space.
Yeah, exactly. But they were moving all the stuff, and they started clearing out all the cupboards.
Right.
And these are cupboards in a lab that hasn't been like renovated in probably about 40 years.
Right.
So we're kind of going through the back of these cupboards, and we're finding all of these old air-sensitive compounds. Right. They're all like locked up in these cupboards in these things called Schlenk lines, which are like, it's basically like a big glass jar that's airtight. But
that's like the one that you recounted how you dropped one.
That's a desiccator.
Okay,
this is
not
much more. This is more airtight. They're much
but
smaller.
Not too dissimilar.
Yeah, these are about the size of a mug.
Oh right, okay.
And so what you do is when you make your air-sensitive compound, when you want to move it from one thing to another to do chemistry on it, you put it in this Schlenk, which is like this big mug, which is airtight. Anyway, so we pull these out, but all of the all of the labels that come off these things, and these are old, these are 10, 20 years old, right? And previously at Sussex, where I did my undergraduate, they did a lot in these air-sensitive compounds. Some of them explode, some of them catch fire, nearly always.
Well, I remember, famous one is sodium, isn't it? Because you keep it under oil, because sodium, if you expose it to air, it suddenly oxidises.
But these literally, if you get a little bit on a tissue paper,
these are sodium to the power of 10.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But some of them were, some of them weren't, and they had to dispose of them, right? So do you know? So we had.
Did you have a big fireworks party?
I will. There's a very learned professor who's very well respected in the inorganic community.
Name?
I'm not going to say. Anyway, he's great, by the way. But he was like, "Let me show you how you dispose of these compounds safely, Steve." Right. So did you know what he did?
He wanged it in the river.
No, put it in the car park and shot it with an air rifle.
So hang on a minute.
Yeah.
So. It was in a jar, protected from the atmosphere.
A glass jar,
so he
protected from
stands
the
well
atmosphere.
back, gets a gun, shoots it.
Yeah, and some of them just like fizzled. Some of them nothing happened. Some of them just like blew up.
In a big,
there wasn't that much material in them, I should say. But yeah, they like literally caught on fire.
That's so cool, man.
Yeah, because and then we kind of had a conversation about it, and saying actually when you don't know what it is, generally there's not a lot of material. So you're not like oxidizing, it's like
huge amounts. Is it not labelled?
Well, it had a label, but these are like 20, 30, 40 years old.
That's not very good labelling, Steve.
It's not good labelling, but you'd have to blame people in the 70s.
Probably best that you destroy that evidence. I think you did the right thing. Can we do that?
Can we shoot stuff with we could put an air rifle on a grant, that means.
No, but I'm serious. Could we get some and like film it and put it on YouTube?
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, like we can do that, and then we can make all the AdSense revenue.
I've got a friend who's got like an air gun that looks like a real gun.
Yeah, we should do it.
So cool.
The TheScienceShed explosions.
Blow it up.
Sounds of the past, pulled on your money cross and pulled in your glass. I didn't have the internet, just see a Game of Thrones, but still I had some fun saying shit like telephone.
Have you heard of The Case of the Midwife?
I haven't, Nick. What is that?
It's a very famous Sherlock Holmes novel.
Right.
No, that's not true. It sounds like it's a famous Sherlock. It's actually about a famous scandal in science.
Yeah.
Ended up with someone shooting themselves in the head.
Wow, that's a good ending.
Yeah.
It's a good closer.
Basically,
it's like Reservoir Dogs.
A little bit, yeah. But it's the controversy rumbles on to the day this book was written, which admittedly was 40 years ago.
All right, so tell me about it. What is it? Who wrote it? What's it about?
Well, it doesn't matter so much who wrote the book. It's more about the story and what happened. A guy called Arthur Koestler wrote the book. He's an interesting guy in his own right. I'll tell you more. Remind me at the end about him. So Paul Cameron, he was working on these toads. So there was a big battle between people who were in the camp of Lamarck. Have you heard of Lamarck?
Lamarckian evolution. So I think Lamarckian evolution is the idea that if you it's kind of being picked up again with the idea of epigenetics, but the idea being that if you exercise a muscle, your muscles get bigger, and then you can pass on that as its genetic information. The reason a giraffe evolved to get to have a longer neck didn't happen through the genetic manipulation, generational. It's actually affected during your lifespan. Is that right?
That sort of thing. Although they weren't even inferring genetics back then. It was more a case that the work that you did in your life, it has philosophical impacts on like humans and stuff as well.
Right.
Because like the more work, if you better yourself in your life, it would be more satisfactory to know that by bettering yourself, you would pass some of those characteristics on to your children.
To your children.
Okay. And that was kind of what people essentially
thought.
Like,
for instance, a love of Rush. Like you could,
so,
you could pass on. So there we go. We've disproved Lamarckian evolution.
My dad likes Bob Dylan. I quite like Bob Dylan. I just bought some tickets to see Bob Dylan with my dad.
Yeah, that's cool.
Playing in Cardiff next year. But anyway, so that was a kind of attractive idea from biology. Right. And until Charles Darwin came along, really that was kind of
and dropped the mic.
Yeah, until Darwin came along and he had the idea of natural selection, which is the idea that it's basically through a process of elimination that traits are preserved.
Yeah.
So you don't better yourself and pass it on. It's just that the things that are better at existing have more chance of passing on whatever it is that they've got. So this dude, Paul Cameron, came along and he spent a long time, years, breeding amphibians, right, salamanders and toads. And he was essentially trying to breed them through some generations and show that characters could be acquired.
What kind of characteristics?
So this is one with the salamanders. What he did was there were two types of salamanders: one that live up in the hills and one that live down in the valleys.
Right.
The one that live down in the valleys lay their eggs in water.
Right.
And have lots of young. And the ones up on the hills have they don't lay their eggs in water and they have only 2 young.
Right.
So he swapped them.
Right.
In the lab.
So he just wanged the one in the hills in the water.
Exactly. So he swapped them around, and basically what he found out was the one that was from the water would start to have offspring like the one from the land. And then that would persist through the generation. So you could see that would be becoming acquired, and the idea was that it was through the environment. People were skeptical.
Right.
People were skeptical. All right. But no one did anything because it takes a long time to.
So we should say that's people still do those kind of studies today, right? So people that study frog eggs or zebrafish or Drosophila flies, there's still kind of people that breed these things for different reasons, but it's quite interesting that we're kind of doing this even this time ago.
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely, and those experiments, I don't actually know whether anyone's tried to repeat them that he did with the salamander. All right, maybe they have.
It's cool experiment.
We can have a fact check.
Did he go salamander collecting?
He did, and frog collecting.
But awesome. Usually, so he went out with a big net and a big hat.
I don't know what he did, but Paul Cameron. He was originally a music student, and then he was really into reptiles and amphibians. He had his own viviparium and shit like that. So he loved that stuff. So he loved going out and doing it. So he was a proper biologist, loved collecting things. Anyway,
salamanders published that stuff. Other people, neo-Darwinists, were thinking, this is what on earth? This doesn't fit with our ideas. This must be balls, right? Anyway, camera was.
So which side's the establishment on? Like, what's the Royal Society?
By this stage, the establishment was firmly on the neo-Darwinist side.
Right. Okay.
So the other people.
So they're hanger-honourers.
Yeah. There's a caveat to that as well.
Right.
But anyway, basically, then he did these experiments with a toad. These toads, when they mate, there's two different types. There's one that's in the water and one that's on land.
Yeah.
And the one that's in water starts to develop during the mating season, develops these rough patches on its hands so that it can hold on to the woman better, so she doesn't get away when they mate. I could do with some of those.
I knew that was coming.
Anyway, so but basically what he did was he took those to land, and they would evolve. They would lose the ones that came from land would start to form them, and vice versa. People were very sceptical. Chap in London, William Bateson.
So wait, this is arguing for Lamarckian evolution.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, he was proving.
So he's like
he's doing experiments and showing.
He's telling us that episode The Phantom Menace is better than Empire.
Imagine. Exactly.
But that's the kind of level of.
So William Bateson in London hears this, and he's like, "Oh my God! How can anyone say that the Attack of the Clones is better than the Empire Strikes Back? You're mental." Right. So he comes in and he says, "Can I have one? Can I have one of your frogs, please?"
Yeah.
So he gets one of his frogs.
Okay.
Basically, he's getting slated in the academic press, usually unfairly, because to do those experiments, you've got to spend 10 years of your life, right?
Yeah.
If you want to commit scientific fraud, make sure the experiments are fucking difficult.
This guy doesn't sound like very smart.
Make sure they take 10 years. But that was kind of one of the arguments for, like, he's doing this 10 years. It's clearly not true.
Yeah.
Anyway, a long series of events happen. This is going on for a long time, controversy. Eventually, one of these frogs gets examined later on at a later date.
He robs the frog.
The frog is somehow transported to another guy. I forget his name now. One of the guys who was in the camp.
The guy that was clearly that Jedi is better than.
Yeah, and he looks at the frog and he sees these. They're called nuptial pads, euphemistically. These are pads that the male uses to hang on to effectively rape the female.
Right.
He looks at them under the microscope, has a good look, injects some India ink, so like a common dye, into another part of a frog, finds that they're exactly the same. Someone had deliberately been manipulating the frogs to make it appear that they were developing these darkly coloured
hang on a minute,
rough pads.
So
it was fraud, Steve, of the worst kind.
But where did... So what, he was sticking the pads onto the...
It still remains contentious to this day, but the idea is someone in his lab was doctoring the frogs to make it appear as if they were getting acquired characteristics. Anyway, the guy that examined them published it in Nature.
Right.
Came out.
Good journal. Heard of that
basically
one.
Said this is scientific fraud.
Oh, he published the fact that he'd let the cat out of the bag.
The guy who studied the frogs and found these things put the word out, published it in Nature. Basically, Paul Camera gets this news published in Nature, goes out up in the hills of Vienna, blows his brains out with a gun.
Wait. So the guy that's the proponent of Lamarckian evolution finds that in his own lab someone's been...
No, he doesn't find it. These frogs are independently examined by someone else.
Ah, okay. And that's
so he's been sprung.
Right, okay.
So it
was him.
Yeah, so he gets his brains blown out. He shoots himself in the head.
Wow, that's
because
really
of scientific fraud. It's a really sad story.
There was a stem cell incident a few last year, right? There was a very famous paper that was retracted in Science about how to reprogram stem cells.
Yeah,
and someone
called Stem Cell Controversy.
Yeah, basically, and someone killed themselves on that, isn't it?
We could talk about it another time. I mean,
it's kind of interesting. I suppose just like how we've spoken about it before, how close, like how serious some people take their work, right? And this is why they get. People really see it as more than a job. It's a real kind of calling, and like if you did get busted, you'll be so...
Well, the dude, I mean, it's the same thing. It happened with the stem cell controversy.
Yeah.
We talk about it in more detail another time, but basically someone fraudulently did some stuff on the stem cells. One of the co-authors in Japan hung himself in his lab.
Yeah.
And this was only 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So there's a lot. People don't... I mean, you could argue that scientists are a bit stupid taking it that seriously.
Yeah.
Effectively something that's maybe is slightly inconsequential.
Do you think anyone's ever killed themselves over Star Wars, though? Probably.
Probably. Yeah, I reckon
so it's passion, I suppose.
I almost killed myself when I saw The Phantom Menace. Oh, hello everybody. So Steve's with me in physical form, but not in spirit at the moment. He's trying to tweet
I'm
Adam
here,
Buxton.
Nick. I just tweeted Adam Buxton.
Oh, you hope
he'll answer back.
Oh, I hope he replies.
Yeah. So we're still sat on the floor on the podcasting by bin.
Yeah.
Someone's just put something in the bin right by Nick's head.
They've done it several times since I've sat here. I'm surprised they didn't mistake me for the bin, to be honest. Yeah, so, well, the floor is hard. My hemorrhoids are playing up. Do you have hemorrhoids, Steve?
No.
I've had them for a while.
I don't want to know this.
They've got better recently. You've just got to change your diet.
You had a gout as well, haven't you?
I had gout, yeah. That was my first gout attack. Was in about 2008, I think.
Right.
Had some gouty attack.
Nick's Victorian ailments.
Do you know what gout is, Steve?
It's uric acid crystallising out of
Yeah,
your blood, is that
that's
right?
absolutely right. So urea, your body gets rid of its nitrogenous waste, so that's amino acids, which it's metabolised, chomped up. You need to get rid of the nitrogen, Steve.
Right.
All animals do. Mammals package it up in a compound called urea, which is water soluble, and that forms most of your urine, which isn't water itself.
That was one of the first synthetic organic compounds ever made.
It was, I know that, and I've shown it in my lecture. I forget the two chaps who did it.
There's some quote about I've created nature or something. It was the first time anyone had ever made something that was indistinguishable.
I've got a slide on that in one of my lecture notes, but I can't remember what the names of the guys were. But you're right. But anyway,
another classic from the Science Shed, everyone. Some guy said something about something that we can't remember.
But anyway, so mammals get rid of it in a soluble form. Birds don't wee. Did you know that?
Birds don't wee. So
they
how
don't
do birds
wee.
get rid of nitrogen?
So you know when you see a bird crap?
Yeah, it's quite wet.
You've got a black bit and a white bit.
Yeah.
Do you know what the black bit is?
No way.
That's
I never
shit.
knew that.
You know what the white bit is?
Urea.
Uric acid.
Right.
Because they can't. So birds can't
is that
make.
why paint gets like if a bird?
Yeah, it's acidic.
Like
so
cracks on your
birds
car.
can't make soluble urea, and they make uric acid, which is insoluble.
Yeah. So
and they
it precipitates
excrete
out.
it. Yeah, in their cloaca.
Which is why it's
or something.
cloudy, presumably.
Exactly. So the fact that it's insoluble is a problem if you have a lot of it. So certain foods have a high concentration of purines in them.
Right.
Things like that, your gentleman of the 16th century might consume a lot of, like pheasant's game and red wine, things like that.
And like foie gras, all the kind of
you've got to be
foods.
careful because some things you think contain a lot of it actually don't.
Okay.
Blackberries are stuffed full of purines. Really bad for gout. Can't eat blackberries.
Blackberries.
Blackberries, yeah.
That's so weird.
Really bad for you. But anyway, so so if you eat a lot of them, you can't process it, and I can't remember the exact mechanism, but it ends up with you getting a high concentration of uric acid in your blood.
Right.
And then it will crystallise because it's insoluble, and often it will crystallise all over the place, but it will cause problems when it's near your joints because it forms crystals when you move your joints.
It hurts.
You get friction. It's really, really painful. In fact, incredibly painful.
It normally happens in your big toe, right?
The first joint that gets affected is the knuckle of your big toe.
Yeah.
So one day in 2008, I got up on a Monday morning to go to work at Imperial College, and it was the Six Nations was on.
Right.
And I had quite a lot of Guinness the day before.
Right, is that what you're blaming?
A few pints of Guinness. I was all right. I was.
Or a few pints of blackberries, maybe.
Yeah, maybe it was all the Ribena that I'd had. But anyway,
Blackcurrant.
I got to. I thought, oh, my toe hurts as I was walking to the tube.
Yeah.
I got on the tube, and as I got off the tube at the other end, I tried to walk. I could barely walk. I was in real anger. I was walking on my heel, and I thought I must have broken my toe, like in a drunken stupor, even though I wasn't drunk enough to be in a stupor. Maybe I kicked something I just didn't know and didn't notice.
Someone stamped on your toe or something.
So when I got to the office, I was in so much pain. So it's only about from South Kensington to Imperial College. It's like 5-minute walk. By the time I got to my office, I had to lie on the floor. The pain was so bad, I felt nauseous. I felt I was going to pass out. I was lying on the floor.
Yeah.
Head between the legs jogging.
I haven't seen you in pain before, Nick, but I bet you're not. You make a bit of a meal of it, don't you? Do you really like?
Yeah, definitely.
It's just like you want people to feel sorry for yourself.
Oh my God!
You definitely don't suffer quietly.
The slightest pain, scream.
Everyone's going to know that
Absolutely.
I'm in pain.
But anyway, so yeah, I had. Basically, it was hurting a lot. I thought I'd broken my toe, so I asked my dad, who's
he's a GP, right?
A GP, a retired family doctor.
Did he know straight away?
He just laughed at me and said, I thought I broke my toe. I said, should I go and get an X-ray? And he just went, have you ever had gout?
Right.
That's what it was.
Does your dad have gout?
I don't think so, but my granddad had it. It is genetic.
Right.
I don't think my dad's had it. But my granddad certainly had gout.
And ever since then, have you laid off the blackberries?
I'm a little bit more careful with what I eat. I think dehydration is something.
Right. Well, that makes sense.
Be careful about getting dehydrated.
So I mean, that's the two ways to crystallize something, right? You either evaporate the solvent, or you increase its insolubility.
Spoken like a true chemist.
Yeah.
Well done. So yeah, I did. I've had one attack since.
Right.
And not. So I'm going to be careful. I tell you what. I've been right off those blackberries. The Guinness still hitting it hard. Blackberries.
A lesson.
Off the list.
Life lessons in the Science Shed, everyone. Life lessons. Nick.
Steve.
So you know we talked about my paper that got published the other day, and when I drilled a hole in a paint can.
You keep banging on about that paper.
They didn't take it.
They didn't take the paper.
They didn't want the paint can picture.
You know what? I even though I want to try and knock you down every opportunity I get, Steve.
Thanks, Nick.
That was a bloody good idea and a bloody good picture.
Well, thanks.
Nature Communications.
Yeah, what are you doing?
Get your act together. I want to see the picture that did get on the cover.
Yeah, me too.
Have you got it?
I haven't actually checked because I was so angry about it.
You're so angry. You haven't even looked at what was actually on the cover.
Yeah, but what's interesting? So when
it's
we
not
did
like it's a proper magazine anyway. There's no cover.
That's true.
Do they? Is it like the online thing?
Yeah, I don't know. So as part of that, the university wrote a press release of the paper, right?
Yeah.
And it's quite
I've
interesting.
seen it, but
yeah.
I only briefly cast my eyes over it.
Oh my god!
Tell me about.
So this is what happens. Let me explain to you. This is what happens. You've had a bit of media coverage.
I'll tell you about one of.
Yeah.
We had. So we did have media coverage for paper published recently, but there was one a while ago that got so garbled.
It was amazing. So anyway, so what happens is the university press office rings me up and says, "We can see that you've published a paper. We'd like to do a press release on it."
Didn't you write a little press release?
No, so
some people do. I
write
my own, so I can keep it.
Right, you can keep control because you're a massive
I write
freak.
my own press release.
So no, I spoke to this person for about half an hour, and they wrote a press release, which a lady called Sarah, she's lovely, and did a really good job. It was a little bit too. So this is what happens with journalists: is they hype everything, don't they? They go crazy.
You've got to get people's attention.
Exactly. But what I did is I tweaked it, and I understand that obviously if you dumb it down to exactly the level that it should be absolutely scientifically accurate, so it's basically the paper.
You kind of Trump voters.
So I had to sex it up a bit. So anyway, I edited the press release, and I said, okay, fair enough. So it was correct and still scientifically accurate, and then sent it back. And then anyway, it goes out on this kind of press embargo where like various different media sources get access to it.
You can't release it until it's actually come out in the publication.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, that happened, and it got picked up by a few. So the Daily Express published it.
Daily Express it's a very cerebral paper, read by the thinking person.
Fuck
isn't
you.
It?
Anyway, yeah.
I hope that we don't have any Express reading listeners.
I looked at it. Maybe I tweeted the Express as soon as it came out. But it basically said that I'd solved Alzheimer's disease and that I'd created a new MRI, which neither of these things are true.
So, can I just say what my idea of what you've done is?
Right.
So Steve's got some microscope, which is massive, and he's looked at tiny little molecules and basically done a few experiments to see how they stick together in a dish, in like a really kind of, in a plate, totally divorced from a human being. It's chemistry, yeah.
Well, we're looking at protein.
So I'm trying to, I'm trying to de-hype you now.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
So you just pissed around.
I would never want my head to get my head too high in the clouds when I've got friends like you, Nick. Yeah, but you're right. We measured a fundamental physical property on a single protein aggregate, which is interesting. But that's not what I said we did.
So when are you going to get that microscope on my brain then, so that we can test whether I'm developing Alzheimer's?
That's what they said I did.
When are you going to get it on my brain?
They said everyone's going to get this scan now. Massive breakthrough.
I think what was it called? New scan for Alzheimer's or something.
It's completely wrong. Completely wrong.
So you should send a letter if you feel strongly about it. Send a letter to the newspaper.
Maybe I will. Maybe I will. I did tweet them as soon as it came out saying I'm happy to correct this. This is incorrect.
Yeah.
They just ignored me.
Well, you know, they've got bigger fish to fry than some boring, beardy scientists from Cambridge, don't they? Oh, my God.
Nick.
It sounds a little bit familiar. So we didn't get that. I saw the article in the Express. It was massive. We had a tiny, you know, those little news in brief?
All right, the things are like one sentence long.
So we published a paper, right? Again, totally sort of esoteric paper. I'm not saying that yours.
You were proud of it, but yeah.
It was a good paper. It was in a good journal. It was in Nature Materials. And basically, we'd compared by measuring how hard or soft they were, the kind of bone that's made by different types of stem cells.
Right.
So you grow them in a dish, they form this mineral stuff, and then you can prod it to find out how hard it is, or use a laser to find out what chemicals are in it. So we compared them that way. And some of the cells we'd happen to get from Mouse calvarius. That's a skull of a
calvarius.
mouse.
Okay.
All right. So what did they lead the headline with?
Brain cancer caused by coffee.
Mouse skulls key to car accident victim, or something like that. So they'd taken the mouse skulls as being the central part, and they thought the mouse skulls. We were using the mouse skulls to fix broken legs.
Well, let's talk about. Let's give the journalists credit where credit's due. They've got to try and make a story that they think people will be interested in.
I think as scientists, you've got to remember that they're just trying to shift units.
Yeah.
Or get clicks.
Just
think about clickbait.
Clickbait.
Everything's clickbait these days. I can't look at the bottom of a newspaper article without finding out what's going to happen next to the rather lovely, attractive...
Nick took a cell from the brain of a mouse. You won't guess what happened next.
TheScienceShed! We're in the TheScienceShed! TheScienceShed! We're in the TheScienceShed! Come on, Steve!
Bunsen.
Burner!
Dolly.
Machine!
Internal.
Combustion!
Why do we need
Stove!
Petri?
Dishes!
Austin.
Base!
Isaac.
Newton!
Transplanting.
Science!
Are we at the end of another one?
We're at the end of another one, but our first one on location.
First one on location.
With other people.
Yeah, in the background. So, do you reckon people have been annoyed with all of the voices?
I would like to apologise. If it's really annoying,
there's lots of noise, like ding dongs. I don't know whether.
Yeah, well, it's probably not the. Well, they don't really expect Radio 4, do they?
Yeah, no. But I mean, it's kind of faithful to the Adam and Joe kind of thing, because a lot of their podcasts they did at locations like a leisure centre.
Right. So it's fitting. So as we're at Adam and Joe in the Southbank, we podcast from a foyer by a bin next to a Christmas tree.
Exactly. Everything's here. All the ingredients are here. And look, right on cue. It's another airport announcement.
We've actually just. This has all been done in post.
You know what we should do, Steve?
What?
We're coming to the end of the podcast. People should look on Twitter to see the various things that we've posted, and also to ask us anything, questions, find out what we've been doing.
So
please do tweet us.
Yeah, so I'm at Steve the Chemist on Twitter.
And I'm at the Evans Lab.
So yeah, please get in contact if you like the Science Shed, or if you want us to talk about anything specifically, and tell us what you like and you don't like.
Yeah, we'd love it if you did that. But Steve, I think we're going to have to go now, because they'll be starting soon and we want to get in.
Yeah, can we get a beer?
We should get a beer.
Let's get a beer.
All right.
Okay, guys. Bye.